Thank you. It's a great pleasure to invite you all to Manchester for the 71st meeting of BAUS. It's a great pleasure to come back to Manchester. I'm a lad who was brought up in Bolton, only 12 miles away, so it does feel a little bit like coming home. It's now 12 months since I had this medal put around my neck by my illustrious predecessor, Adrian Joyce. As some of you may know, but I suspect many of you don't, Adrian underwent major cardiac surgery 2 weeks ago. He's making an excellent recovery, he's back at home, and he wishes that I should pass on to you his thanks for all the wishes and cards that he's received from you. And I'm sure we'll all wish him a very speedy and rapid recovery. On a more positive note, I'd also like to point out that one of our numbers, Devinder Sharma, who's a trauma specialist urologist at St George's, was awarded an OBE in the Queen's Honours Lists. Now, in fact, you don't get to a meeting like this without a lot of high-level organisation. And I'd particularly like to thank these three gentlemen for putting on such a fabulous programme. Frank Keeley has been an outstanding honorary secretary both this year and last year. He's now being ably supported by Duncan Somerton as the secretary-elect, and Shamin Khan has also helped in the organisation of the courses. Pardon me. I'd also like to thank the section chairman for yesterday's outstanding day. All the sections worked really well together. Bob Pickard on behalf of academic, Asif Munir, who will become the next chairman of the andrology section, working with Duncan Somerton, Alan McNeil on the oncology section, and Roland Morley. And we really did have a first-class day. But behind the scenes, it's these three individuals from the events team in the BAUS office, Hannah, Freya and Harry, who've been working behind the scenes, making sure that everything works when we arrive, and I'm very grateful to them. I'm also very pleased that we have 24 world-class guest lecturers from overseas. And one of the great strengths of BAUS is the interaction between the members and the overseas speakers. So if you see them, please welcome them, please talk to them, and let's have some really good dialogue. And we've got some great speeches coming up. They're only on that list in the order in which they appear within the programme. I'd also like to thank our many sponsors. These were the primary sponsors. There are many more sponsors. Please visit the exhibition. We need their support for the running of BAUS over the next year. We started very well with a lot of science and academia yesterday, and then a fabulous evening. Yesterday, the cycle or bike to BAUS team arrived, 12 intrepid cyclists all cycling for the Urology Foundation charity. They arrived around lunchtime. And then, as always, we had the fabulous football competition, and I've got to thank Altaf Majira and Saiful Maya for putting on such a good show. This time the local team Manchester beat London South in the final, which is excellent. Also, 22 of us, perhaps lacking in a certain intelligence, turned up at the Manchester Velodrome and cycled ourselves until we were ready to drop for about 2 hours. We had a fabulous race at the end, and I'd like to say that the Brits won, but I've got to be honest and admit that Stephen Marks from Christchurch in New Zealand won, but very closely followed by two of the team who'd actually cycled up from London over the previous 3 days. So what's been going on over the last 12 months? Well, there's a map of the world, and that gives you some idea of what the president of BAUS does in a 12-month period. Shortly afterwards, in fact the day after BAUS, my wife Helen and I jumped in the car, drove to Taunton, went straight to Heathrow and flew out to the Canadian Urology Association. We have very strong links with Canada. We used to have shared meetings. Those of you like me who've got a lot of grey hair probably remember the joint meetings. The last one was in '86 in the Café Royal in London. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Curtis Nicol at the meeting, who is the president-elect and will become next year the president of the Canadian Association. Later on in the autumn last year, we went over to South Africa to a very good South African meeting, a country that really is working hard to put itself back on the map. There's areas of very high quality urological services, but interestingly, they're also trying to build a nationalised system rather like the NHS, for which they need a lot of credit. Interestingly, and I did point this out to them at the meeting, what they're doing as doctors is opposing the introduction of an NHS, rather like we did in 1945. So we've done the same thing. Shortly after that, we went off to Ireland to a fabulous meeting in the Republic of Ireland. And again, the two presidents there, John Thornhill, and the previous one, David Quinlan, were very helpful. This year in January, a group of us, really set up by the RSM and Roger Plale as the president of the RSM, visited Tanzania and Zanzibar. And there you really do see the third world. It's great to see the work that BAUS does through Eurolink with all the work we do out there, particularly in centres like KCMC in Moshi. And the more we can support Eurolink, the better. And the profits from both the football and the small profit from the cycling yesterday will go to the velodrome. But it was also a great privilege really in Zanzibar to see the outstanding work that my colleague Rue McDonough has done out there, setting up charitable hospitals in Zanzibar and what they've achieved. So February means India, and off we went to Ranchi, which is really between Delhi and Calcutta in northern India. And it's great to have Percy Chibber here as the president of the Indian Urological Society. And he's both chairing a session and delivering a lecture here this week. And we were made extremely welcome there. In March, it was the EAU, and of course there's a great British interest now in the EAU, with Chris Chappell as the Secretary General, and also with James and Dow as the head of the guidelines group. And we've agreed with BAUS and the EAU that we're going to start jointly badging the EAU guidelines to use them more and more, like many of us have done. And we're keen to see the British membership of the EAU grow over the next year or so. April was Australia, and we're building fabulous links with USANS, the Australian and New Zealand associations. We're talking about sharing databases to pool our data and really learn a lot from each other. And it's great that Mark Frydenberg, the president of USANS, is here today. The final of the big international meetings, of course, is the AUA, still probably the biggest meeting, and we were made very welcome there in the fabulous city of New Orleans for a very high-level scientific program. And it's great that William Bonert, who was the president of the AUA in New Orleans, is here, together with Manoj Monga, who is the new secretary and will be running the AUA for the next few years, as well as Indy Gill, who's one of our guest speakers, but is also their lead for global affairs. So it's great to see so many high-class international people here. Now, this is the thing we're proudest of this year. The new website looks absolutely fantastic. And Tony Probert and his team really have done a fabulous job at Light Media. They've done it in a relatively short time period, exactly to the specification we wanted. And much of this work really involves a thanks and a credit to Nigel Bullock, who's really led this whole project from the BAUS side. And it's a pleasure to see a website that is bright, interesting, and a damn sight faster than the old one. What we learned from studying the old one was that 3/4 of all the hits on the website were to do with patient affairs, either patient information leaflets, or maybe it was doctors looking for patient information leaflets. So you can see immediately there's 3 big boxes up there which guide people in the right direction. If we just start with the first one and go in and have a little look at the first one, you come to the first page. And for that tiny number of consultants and that slightly larger number of trainees and slightly larger still number of associate specialists who are not members of BAUS, there's a box there you can click on and join for the very few people who are not members. But the important one probably is the governance box. And if you go in there, that tells you how your organisation is run. Who are the people that you should call to account if you want things to change? And they're listed there. And here are the trustees. The people who at the moment, and this changes all the time as you elect and re-elect and then we demit, these are the people who run BAUS at the moment. Myself and my great colleague Kieran O'Flynn, who will take over from me next year, who's been very much my right-hand man over the last year, together really well supported by the trustees you see there. Kieran's also been treasurer. He demits as treasurer at this meeting, and Ken Anson will take over as treasurer. And Frank Keeley, who I've already said has done a fabulous job, he's been a trustee, has been an absolute source of wisdom to me, and he will demit and will be succeeded by Duncan Somerton. You can also see Damien, Susan and David Jones there, who are our co-opted trainee trustee members. Also, you've elected the successors. Ian Pearce will follow as the treasurer after that, and Paul Jones will follow in running the meetings in the years after Duncan has done his job. So let's look at this in a little more detail, because one of the things I think we've really got to stress to you is the regionalisation of BAUS. We have 16 regions, including Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and the various regions in the UK. And together with Kieran, we've visited all but one of these over the last year at the regional meetings. I'm very keen to come out to as many regional meetings as I can, but I want you to hold these people to account, to talk to you, to tell you what's happening at BAUS, and more importantly still, for you to tell them what they should feed back to BAUS. We've changed the way BAUS Council works, and the regional reports do not occur in the afternoon as an afterthought. They occur early in the morning, and the regional reps report back on the key issues that we're discussing at any time, whether that's commissioning or emergency urology or whatever. But they can only do that job properly if they hear from you what's working well and what's not working well. So the names are all there. It's a pleasure to see two new names come up there with David Thomas and Sri Prasad and Bob Meddings, who's been re-elected. But those are our regional representatives going forwards. Looking now at the middle, the subspecialist section, we come into a section on the website where you need to log in to get further access. But here again, there's lots of things to actually see and do. You can see the sections. It'll then break you into the various sections and you can get more detail. Or for the trainees, they can get access directly to the Surge website from the BAUS website, and it's now bright, modern, and will get better and better. So please use all these sections. The area obviously to steer the patients to is the bit which has been written specially for patients, and there's lots and lots of really good information for patients there. It's nice and easy. They only type in www.baus.org.uk and in they go, and they can see most of the material. The level of your details and a lot more you need to log in to see, but what we have now got is a find a urologist, so the patient can type in an area, they can find the urologists, and they'll get the basic detail of the names of the urologists, their subspecialty areas and their hospital address, and that's the limit of what they'll achieve, but they have got access to it, which is a fabulous improvement with the new website. Now, I couldn't get a single picture that was big enough to show the whole college, so there's two pictures there of the old building and the Nuffield building alongside it. Now, I think one of the things I hadn't appreciated before I became Vice President of BAUS was the way we work so well with the other 9 surgical specialties, and that's under this umbrella of the Federation of Surgical Specialty Associations, the FSSA. And we meet with each of the 4 Royal Colleges twice each a year. And it's a real pleasure to work with the other specialties. I thought all orthopaedic surgeons were a bit slow and a bit dim. I was totally wrong. The British Orthopaedic Association is flying. They're the stars of the show at the moment. But we box well above our weight for a small organisation. Now, it's your organisation. This is a membership organisation. So those of you who haven't been in the front door of the old building, turn left, gone into the Nuffield building and gone up to the 6th floor there, please do so. Go and visit the staff. These are the people who run your organisation. Fabulously led by Anne Bishop and also by Trish Hagan. We have a really, really good team. Margaret Joyce runs some of the databases, the membership organisation. Linda runs all the finances, and Louisa Herman's the newest member of staff, and she's going to run the specific projects, particularly like the publication of individual surgeons' data. So she'll be the people contacted you to try and chiv you along and get more data in. So these are the people who run the organisation. Please go and say hello. Now, we met in April. So we met in April last year, and then we met again in February this year to try and do a revision of the strategy going forwards, to try and have a strategy for the next 10 years or more. So Kieran and I had met and talked this through because we want a strategy that will come out of my time, through his time, and keep going forwards. And in February, 30 of us went up to Birmingham and met there. And we decided there that although this is the mission statement, that is what drives BAUS, higher standards through education, research and clinical excellence, that what we need to do is to develop it to a slightly higher level. And we think the 3 primary goals or planks of the organisation should be: number 1, supporting the urologist in the workplace; number 2, making BAUS the go-to place for anything urological. So if patients, charities or the government want to know about urology, we've got to make sure they come to us first. And then thirdly, make sure that BAUS is fit for purpose. It's fabulously good, as I've said, but we need to see if there are ways of revising it. So we want to revise the guidance on job plans, working strategies, and we hope to get that out as this year goes forwards. We want to look at ways we can work with the government. We have regular meetings with the Ministry of Health through the FSSA, and we want that to keep going. And we're considering the idea of re-looking at the sections, because these sections were put together 17 years ago by Fletcher Dean when he was president, to see if we need to think about whether these are the right sections going forwards, and perhaps a general section of urology first and then work out what else we need might be one strategy going forwards. Now, one of the biggest projects likely to hit us is this document. This was written by David Greenaway as the chairman of the group. He's the Vice-Chancellor of Nottingham University and a Professor of Economics. He pulled together a very high-level group of people and produced this report, Securing the Future of Excellent Patient Care. And the premise was that we've got to deliver a health service that's appropriate for the needs of society, not just let it evolve, perhaps, the way doctors want it to evolve. And one of the strengths we have in urology is that this guy, Ian Airdley, one of our own, who's now a Vice President of the English College of Surgeons, is leading the strategy for the UK. And we'll be feeding in to NHS England this Thursday some of the ideas. These are just a few of the little statements that come out of the Shape of Training report. The surgery needs to train for the needs of society. I think that's important. That therefore not all surgeons might be able to do, he says, the specialty of their choice. I've put the word subspecialty in. In other words, we've got to encourage our trainees to train in the areas where there is a need and where the jobs will be. And that's going to become important. We are absolutely not talking about office urology. We're talking about the principle of training urologists in the generality of their specialty, and then perhaps having a smaller specialty, a subspecialty, if you like, of the true subspecialists who might represent 30%, maybe 40%. That's the training structure we have at the moment. And what Ian is taking through to NHS England is the concept that we need to radically rethink core training. We really do not think that core training is fit for purpose. And general surgery is going to lead the way forwards, particularly looking at the concept of delivering emergency general surgery. The advantage for us in this is that they will take back in urology and the basic emergency paediatric surgery back into general surgery so they can deliver it across the country. The more thorny question, and general surgery are going to grasp this, the question is, will we, is whether for some trainees who are good enough, they might be able to exit basic or CCT training at the end of year 4 and then compete for fellowships if they were properly funded by the government. There's a lot of ifs and buts there, and that's what we've got to look at carefully. But some changes there are definitely going to happen within general surgery, and it may be feasible within urology as well. And as I say, Ian's going to lead that. We're also very pleased that Peter Walton and his team have delivered a much better set of databases. These are now up and running and really are going to be easier to work with. Some of you have already logged into them. It's the same login, the same password, and then you can go forwards from there. And we think this will make a difference. I'm very grateful to all the colleagues who provided their data for nephrectomy. These were the individual data produced by my two colleagues, Andrea Cannon and Nick Burns-Cox in Taunton. Their data on numbers, types of operations, laparoscopic or not, and some of the preoperative factors. But we're also well aware that that happened. There was some bad press. Thankfully, it didn't hit urology, but it nearly did, and we've got to be mindful of that. So we've got to make sure that the data we collect is as good and as accurate as it can be. And one of the things the Dendrite database lets you do is analyse your own data much better. This took me barely 2 minutes. These are the data from Taunton, just looking at the percentage of patients done laparoscopically for nephrectomies in Taunton compared to the national average. I can't read from here, but I think the national average was 62% and the Taunton average is about 85%. But the dots are all the hospitals in the country. As an individual, we can't see who the other hospitals are, but you can see where your own hospital is, and you can sub-analyse lots of the data doing that. So going forwards, the consultant outcome publications is going to happen this year. Bruce Keogh, the medical director, is adamant we have to publish some data, but we're going to be careful with the data that we give them for public consumption. We're going to do nephrectomy again. That will be the 3rd year. In year 1, we got 74% of all the kidneys removed recorded. Last year, 91%. We want to keep that up. Stress urinary incontinence surgery was 60% in the first tranche. I was hearing yesterday, it's more like 80%. It's getting better. Radical prostatectomy was at 79%. We want that better still. Percutaneous stone surgery, we've got a lot of cases, but the HES data isn't good enough to compare it, so we don't actually know what percentage, and we've got virtually all the urethroplasty surgery there. Just looking at it, for example, in radical prostatectomy, we're going to give them the volume by surgeon, the technique used, the complication rate, and probably the length of stay. But with Sarah Fowler, who is absolutely integral to this and has really supported BAUS fabulously for years, we're going to keep looking at this data to refine it before it's published. We're going to do those 3 parameters for PERCs. But possibly most important of all is that box. What irritates me is the 9% of our colleagues who are not yet putting their data in. It's not fair. If the 91% are risking being pilloried, we have to do something about it. And NHS England have promised that they're going to be very strict. They're interested in the outliers, of whom we have very few in urology, but also the non-compliant people. And they're talking about reporting consultants directly to the CQC and the GMC. We're trying to stop that via the College of Surgeons, but I'm just warning you, the few of you who are not putting data in, please reconsider. This is not optional. On a more positive note, it's great to thank Nick Rukin and his team from Wolverhampton. If you've got an Android phone, the latest version is there. If you've got an iPhone, you go to the App Store, put in urological emergencies, and you'll get this app. There were a few spelling mistakes in the first version, but it's being revised at the moment, and later this week, the newest version should be there. It's meant for the foundation doctors, CTs, and the junior registrars in accidents and emergency, general surgery, and certainly within urology, and covers about 18 different areas of emergency urology. Do have a look. And this was produced by Brainy Doc and Nick and his team. BJUI is going from strength to strength. We're working with the British Journal of Urology, and they're almost there now with BJUI knowledge. And this is their CPD platform and CPD programs that we hope to see launched at the end of this year. When I was thinking about what to say, I looked at some of the older presidential addresses, and this is the quote from Derek Fawcett in 2010. He was then in dialogue with John Fitzpatrick. It was a hope that we could get somewhere. It's taken 5 years, but it looks good. We hope it will be there, and we're hoping it's going to be up and running around the very end of this year or the beginning of 2016. The plan probably is that BAUS will buy into it on your behalf, but eventually it will have to run on its own and be run by and paid for by individual urologists. But we're not quite there yet, and we've got a little bit more development. Commissioning remains one of the hottest potatoes. It's the thing that causes antibodies and disagreement. We have the specialised urology CRG with Vijay Sangha, and we've got the gynae one, which we've got Richard Parkinson on from Nottingham, who's supporting BAUS in trying to improve the stress urinary incontinence, the prolapse areas and those sort of things. It's still contentious. NHS England is still trying to restrict robotic surgery. They're bringing out documents which can be seen as relatively inflammatory, but they are listening, they are rethinking. We're hoping that they will come out with a very positive decision in favour of robotic prostatectomy. We think now we've shared with them the data on partial nephrectomy from the BAUS database, they'll reconsider the fact that they were trying to block that and let it through. And there's a lot of debate by a lot of people, including Prokar Dasgupta and his very advanced team at Guy's, trying to actually make the case for robotic cystectomy, but we are struggling with that. But while this has been going on, a group really from Guy's, Cameron Ahmed, Ben Chalakam, Prokar and quite a few others have put together an extremely good curriculum on robotic training. One, it's good for robotic training, but I think it's the template for training in other disease areas as well. So I think we must take this forward, and hopefully this will come out on the new website within the next week or so. Private practice is something that's difficult. We're a charity, but 70% of our members do private practice, so we have to engage with it. Bupa irritated us all 2 years ago, and now Aviva have done the same thing. If you go on the new website, log in as a member, and look on the right-hand side of the website, there's an area that says forums. The various sections are putting questions for debate in the forums, and I've put one in on this very issue. BAUS cannot tell individual urologists how much to charge for a TRP or a cystoscopy, but we can tell people to charge a fair and reasonable rate and ignore the guidance from people like Aviva, as long as we warn our patients up front that their insurance policy will not fully reimburse them. So the dialogue's there. Please engage. Please use the forums on the websites. This is an interesting new project from the English College, Project 2020. They basically want to knock it down pretty much and rebuild it. So the plan is to completely rebuild the old building on the inside with the same outside structure, to get all the facilities that are in two buildings into a fabulous new building, and then use the second Nuffield building perhaps as a posh hotel or something, with some reservation of rooms for members and things, to fund the development. This will mean, provided the go-ahead, and the final go-ahead will be decided by the English College Council in September, that the BAUS office will move out somewhere around 2017 for a period of about 3 years. We do not know where yet, and then we'll move back in 2020, hopefully into fabulously new refurbished offices. So there's a lot going on, but you'll hear more and more about Project 2020. This is the big meeting in London this October, the 1st to the 4th of October, the World Congress of Endourology. It's being run by BAUS on behalf of the Endourology Society. Please go, encourage your trainees, encourage your colleagues. It's going to be a brilliant meeting, both for the colleagues who go and for those of you who want to take your families down and enjoy London. There's a hell of a lot to see. So let everybody know there's flyers about it here, there's flyers in your bags. Let's make that a really, really good meeting. Now, there's a lot to think about there. I've had a busy year. I've got one more year to go before I hand over to Kieran. I'm very grateful to Kieran O'Flynn for all the support and wise advice he's given me over the last year. We can only run an organisation like this with high quality staff, and it's really the Chief Exec and Bishop, and particularly supported by Trish Hagan, who've given me enormous support over the last year. And clearly, you can't do a job like this where you're away so much without the support of your family. And my wife Helen's been very supportive, travelled with me to virtually all the overseas meetings and some of the regional meetings as well. So I'm very grateful for the next year going forwards. So in conclusion, I think BAUS is in a great state of repair. The future looks bright, but what we need is more dialogue. Next year in February, when brave people put their names forward to be the next president, turn up and vote. It'll be electronic, it'll be easier, but let's show them we've got faith in the membership and also in the officers that run the organisation. Thank you very much.